you have people in your networks who could benefit from hearing the same content, please encourage them to visit our website. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Danielle, good morning. Would you like to unmute yourself and introduce?
Hi, everybody. Danielle Workman, Lincoln Financial Advisors. And I feel like I'm sitting in the dark. I haven't quite figured that out yet.
We can see you.
I will say that I was lucky enough to convince somebody to do my hair. So I don't feel quite as showing off those natural God-given highlights anymore. That's what I prefer to call them, right?
Well, we're happy to have you join us this morning. Kathy Cousin is next on my screen. Would you like to unmute yourself and say hello to the group?
Hi, everybody. I apologize in advance. There's a heated gun battle going on behind me right now with some Buzz Lightyear toys. So they're not listening when I say shush. Kathy Cousin, I'm the market leader for Oswald Companies and a proud board member of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Andy Roisman, I have you next on my screen. Would you like to say hello?
Oh, hi. Good morning. Andy Roisman, proud ambassador for the Birmingham Chamber and currently working for a foundation giving away money. So I feel very blessed at the moment to have that opportunity, somebody who is looking to do good things with his money. So I'm trying to help him spend it.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Jeffrey Geralds, you're next on my screen. Would you like to say hello to our group?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks again for the opportunity to learn some new skill sets and information from chamber members. I appreciate this offer. Thanks.
Welcome. And last but certainly not least, Samantha Michalak is our Membership Engagement Manager. Hi, Sam. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy I get to see all of your faces. I'm sorry you have to look at one of my wedding photos. My husband's using my laptop at the moment, and my desktop doesn't have a webcam, so next best thing. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Gail and her husband.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we will go ahead and begin our presentation. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for this webinar titled Regaining Calm in the COVID Storm. And our first presenter is Gail Patricola. She's going to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her background and then jump into the presentation. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. First, I do want to make a shout out to the chamber staff, the four people that you see on your screen. I've had the privilege of being on the board. I don't know, Joe, how many years it's been, but it's been quite a few years, and I also sit on the executive board. Originally, up until January, I represented Beaumont Health, and then now Gianni and I have our own consulting company. But rather, it doesn't matter if you're a big company or a little company, there's so much value in the chamber, and I know all of you that are on feel that too, but please talk to friends. I know this is a difficult time for businesses, but I'll tell you, just the marketing you get alone far exceeds the amount of a membership. So anyway, thank you to the four of you for all that you do. So Gianni and I thought that we would tell you a little bit about ourselves first, so you know what is our expertise, why would we be talking about this topic. And so firstly, I worked for Beaumont Health for almost 16 years. I had the privilege of starting a department that did not exist within the history of Beaumont, and that is integrative medicine or holistic medicine, this idea that we're more than our physical bodies. And we started off with just 2 employees, just treating cancer patients and their family members, and it quickly grew into last year. I had 60 employees. We had 4 different ambulatory sites throughout Beaumont Health, and we treated over 25,000 outpatient appointments and about 7,000 inpatient appointments. So I feel really proud about that experience. And in addition to my administrative role, I also am a guided imagery specialist. And I would also see patients and sort of became the hospital's one of the stress reduction experts. And I've had the privilege of speaking about these topics all over the United States and actually Canada as well. So stress, yeah, we all are feeling it. And it doesn't matter if you are a so-called expert on stress reduction, this is challenging times. We are not gurus sitting in a cave meditating for 24 hours. But the thing about stress is that it's extremely important to understand the science of stress to understand how we can actually help ourselves with it. And so I do want to take a little bit of time to explain about stress. A lot of people believe that their mind is in their head and their body is beneath their neck. We know that is not true in medicine. We are mind-body operating together at all times. And whenever I talk about the mind-body connection, I love to bring up the story of Roger Bannister. Now, you'll have to forgive me because the PowerPoint that I did in my last webinar failed. So this is a picture of Roger Bannister. He was the first human ever to run a mile under 4 minutes. He did it in 1954, but before that time, scientists stated it was humanly impossible. Nope, the human body can't do it. Well, Roger was a medical student. He was a fabulous athlete. He said to himself, these scientists are wrong, and I think I can do this. And he did. International news that a human being ran a sub 4 minute mile. But as amazing as that was, it's what happened afterwards that I find so remarkable. 1 month later, another runner in the world ran that quickly. 6 months after that, high school students in both Canada and the US were running under 4 minute miles. So isn't that interesting? When our minds told our bodies something was humanly impossible, it was, until someone made it a possibility. Now thousands and thousands of people run that quickly. But our minds are truly complicated parts of us. And neurologists have just really barely tapped into the understanding of the human mind. But they think that they know some things about our mind. And they believe in very general terms that our mind has two different aspects. One aspect they call the conscious mind, the verbal part of us. So I'm using my conscious mind because I'm talking to you all outwardly. But you don't need to be talking for the conscious mind to be working. I'll give you an example. It's that part of my mind that yesterday I learned, my mother lives in a senior center in Canada, that the woman right next to her in the apartment, adjoining hers, has COVID. So immediately, as I'm talking to my mother, trying to remain calm, my mind is going everywhere about this, as you can only imagine. Oh my gosh, the Canadian border is closed. I can't even go to see her. What if I did get there? I can't get in the building, on and on and on and on. I call it the monkey mind, that irritating chatter that we have such difficulty quieting when we're stressed. I actually had this lovely gentleman, a cancer patient, that came to me for stress reduction techniques. And I was explaining about the monkey mind. And he said, Gail, stop. You're healthy. You have one monkey in your head. I've just been told I have cancer and I have a whole zoo of monkeys that I can't keep quiet. But all of us can identify with periods in our life where there's all kinds of chatter. And this is one of them. But most people don't know that they have another aspect of their mind that is completely nonverbal. It cannot talk back to you. Now, neurologists call that the subconscious mind. It's that part of your mind, you know, when you have a thought about someone that you care about, but you might say the thought didn't come from your mind, your head. People say things like, whoa, I had this gut feeling about this person, or I felt it in my heart. That's tapping into this other part of the mind, the subconscious mind. Now, what most people don't also realize is that these two different aspects of the mind are connected to the body through the central nervous system. So when that monkey is chattering away in your head, it tells the body to go into what's called the sympathetic nervous system response. Most people have never heard of that, but they've heard of the fight or flight response in the human body, which I think is miraculous. So little women tear a car door off in an accident to get a baby in a back seat. Men lift automobiles off of another human being. Well, my gosh, how did that happen? It happened because almost everything in that person's body shut down except the hormones needed for that amazing feat. And they're hormones like adrenaline and norepinephrine. But here's the problem and what's happening right now. The body doesn't look up to the mind and say, hey, mind, do you need me to do something amazing? Or the monkey's just chattering away in the head, telling the body that it should be in what is also called the stress response. And we know in medicine that a constant state of stress is harmful to our bodies in a number of ways. But that quiet part of your mind is connected to the other pathway. And that pathway of the central nervous system is called the parasympathetic pathway. I just call it the rest and digest mode of my body. This morning when Gianni was eating his cereal, I didn't see him look at his stomach and say, stomach, digest this cereal, because his stomach knows how to digest. But I bet every one of you has eaten food during a time that you felt stressed and you feel like the food is stuck right here in your stomach. And it is stuck because you are in a stress response where nothing happens except what's needed for that amazing fight or flight response. So what doesn't happen is digestion. Sleep can't happen either in a stress response. But more importantly, no healing takes place in the human body if you're stressed. Now, when you tell this and explain this to people, often they'll say to me, oh my gosh, yep, I'm on that bad monkey side, that stress side. Get me to the good side, that relaxation response. And there are many different ways that we can get to that response. And that's sort of the fun of it. What do we like to do? It's very individual. I'll give you an example. I had a cancer patient that came to me, a very high-powered gentleman. I'm pretty sure his wife forced him to come because she was so worried that his type A personality would harm him during his cancer healing. And I actually did guided imagery with him, and I'll explain what that is. But after I relaxed him with the guided imagery, he opened his eyes and he said, oh, that was fabulous. What's the next best thing that I can do for myself? And I said, well, there's all kinds of things that you can do. And he said, well, I see that you offer yoga at Beaumont. I'm coming to yoga. Literally within minutes of that Monday yoga class, he was knocking on my office door. Gail, I hated that. I don't know how people lay on the floor and move their body like a pretzel. It wasn't relaxing at all. I said, okay, then yoga's not for you. We'll find something else. Well, I heard you have Tai Chi. I'm going to go to Tai Chi. Of course, he hated Tai Chi. And so the next time he was in my office, I had a big, comfortable reclining chair, and I just said, okay, with your eyes gently closed, think of a time in your life that you were doing something that you absolutely loved and felt deeply at peace. He opened his eyes and he said, fly fishing. And so every Friday, if he was healthy enough and if the weather was good, he would go fly fishing. So for lots of people, they don't like fly fishing. But for this fellow, that's what he wanted to do. So the important thing is understanding that stress is harmful to us. Are we going to feel it? Absolutely. But we don't want to be in a stressful state for a long period of time. And we have to find what resonates with us. Now, I believe the best thing we can all do is breathe properly. And people often sort of giggle and think, well, I know how to breathe. But as adults, we actually don't breathe properly. What do? We run around all day long taking these short, shallow breaths from our chest. Now, I know some of you have grandchildren or small children at home. And you know how when you tiptoe into their rooms when they're sleeping, and it's if their whole bodies are going up and down. That's because children breathe properly. They breathe from their diaphragm. Now, you need to practice actually diaphragmatic breathing as adults because we don't use the diaphragm. It's a muscle. So just for a second, just humor me and put one hand on your chest and then one hand beneath your breastbone on your upper tummy. And in a moment, I'm going to guide you to breathe. But I really want you to be aware of bringing the oxygen deep into your belly first. That's the diaphragm. Let that hand expand, then bring the oxygen up to your chest and even up to your neck. So just close your eyes for a moment. And very slowly take a deep breath in, pushing out the belly, hands slowly, then let the air rise into the chest, even higher and higher to the collarbone. And then softly exhale, feeling both hands tuck into the body. Try it one more time, a very slow, conscious belly first breath in, like filling a balloon. The base of the balloon inflates, and let it inflate all the way up to your chest and your neck. And then exhale, release, and relax. Just one more breath. Deep breath in, the diaphragm expands. Can you feel your ribs expand as well, all the way up as high as you can go? And then let this breath out ever so slowly. And so just sort of check in. Do you feel, a lot of people will say that they feel that that also helped release tension in the neck and shoulders. But again, it's a practice. The diaphragm is a muscle, and we have to use it to strengthen it. But the beauty of diaphragmatic breathing is if we can recognize that that monkey is going crazy in our mind, that we're feeling stressed, we feel it, we acknowledge it, we force ourselves to take just 3 to 5 slow diaphragmatic breaths, just like you did, you automatically will move yourself from a stress response into a relaxation response. So for me, breathing, it's free and it's extremely powerful. Now, another technique that I love is guided imagery, but we don't have enough time to totally explain what that is. But I've worked with a number, hundreds of patients that have found that it is helpful. In a nutshell, what it is, it's listening to someone's soft voice. I happen to use music behind my voice, but some people don't. And what neurologists believe is happening is that soft voice giving you positive suggestions, always positive, help to distract that busy monkey mind to a point that neurologists believe the conscious mind isn't listening, so that all suggestions can be given to the subconscious mind. Remember I said it wasn't verbal? So it's like a beautiful sponge. So if you give that part of your mind positive suggestions over and over again, it can change behavior. It's a wonderful, I know that some of you have children because you're dealing with them right now in your house. When you put them to bed at night, guided imagery can be a very powerful tool to help little ones who are also during this period of time feeling stressed.
Let me just interrupt because Gail is humble and won't tell this story, but I want to tell you a very quick story about a colleague of mine, known for many, many years. We worked together on a lot of different projects. And, she called me about 4 weeks ago and she said, I think I might have COVID. I have all of these, what she thought were symptoms of COVID, kind of a dry cough and a little bit of a fever. And she was pretty scared, frankly. And she said, you know, I have trouble sleeping anyway, but now I can't get to sleep. I'm up most of the night. And so after I hung up the phone, after we talked for a while, I talked to Gail and I said, Gail, what can you do for Kathy? And she did a guided imagery CD, which we downloaded onto the computer. And we sent it to Kathy. Kathy called me a week ago, no, last Friday, and said, what did Gail do? Because I go to sleep every night now. And this is a person who for the last 20 years has taken Excedrin PM to go to sleep. And now she is sleeping. She goes to sleep immediately and she stays asleep most of the night. And if she does wake up, she turns Gail on and goes right back to sleep. So that's a great real life example
Oh, thank
of
you.
guided imagery.
Thank you. It is a simple technique. There are lots of free apps. Insight Timer has thousands of guided imagery recordings. You know, I produced one. If you have someone that does have COVID and might be hospitalized, the hospital has produced one on YouTube that we did actually before COVID. And then there's one for Healthcare Heroes as well. So Gianni and I will give you our email addresses. We're more than happy to, to help in any way if you have loved ones that you think might benefit. But I want to sort of end so that there's time for Gianni to talk too. But, these times are so uncertain. And I feel that one technique to help with stress, of course, you know, it might be yoga, it might be walking in the woods, it might be fly fishing, it might be guided imagery. But I think one of the most powerful tools in uncertain times is to focus on what is certain. And we have a lot of things in our lives that's certain. You know, we've got our loved ones, you know, that are certain. We have a roof over our heads, thank God. We have food on our tables. Lots of things to be grateful for. And so that is one technique that I find to be very powerful, is to think about the certainty in our lives. And another certainty is the love and compassion that we can give to each other. And that also helps with our own stress reduction. But I'm going to let my husband, John Petricolo, who I lovingly call Gianni because he's from Italy. Your turn.
Thanks. Thanks, Gail. I appreciate that. And thank you all for being here today. You know, Gail's kind of given you some quick tips from really from a clinical standpoint on what you can do with your body. And so what I want to do is take it to a very practical point of view to talk about how you can use those techniques in order to be a better communicator and leader. My whole career has been around helping organizations and their employees become more effective at what they do, whether it was someone who was the CEO of a company or whether it was an hourly employee who wanted to think about their career. So my last 30 years, I've been a senior executive with an international human resources consulting firm. Again, as Gail mentioned before, you know, we've formed a consulting firm now to do some of the same things we used to do in our everyday work, working for other people. So let's talk about communication, and I'm going to focus it a little bit heavier on talking with employees, communicating to employees, but I want you to remember that the tips that I'm going to give you really work no matter who you're communicating with, whether it's your employee, whether it's a friend, a family member, or even your kids. And so let me start with this. I've worked a lot with employees around communication and leadership. And in all of the studies that I've seen over the years, employee surveys, what we found is that really effective leadership is heavily entwined with effective communication. They really go hand in hand. And when you look at a lot of surveys from employees being asked, what do you want from your leaders? Almost always in the top three, communication comes up. And so I've worked a lot with my clients over the years around communication, and I want to give you some of those tips. Before we get to the tips, I want to talk about the 3 V's of communication. And those 3 V's are verbal, vocal, and visual. The verbal is about what are the words that you're using. The vocal is how do you say the words. And the visual is what are you doing when you're saying the words. And I have another kind of utilization with that, and I call it the 10-40-50 idea. And that is, here's what we know from studies. People remember about 10% of the words that you say to them. So when we leave this meeting today, I'm going to be absolutely sure that nobody's going to probably hit more than 10% of the words that I use. Then you're not going to remember it. That's the 10. The 40 is, what do you use in your voice that helps people understand what you're saying? The inflection in your voice. And you can use that to help people understand. And then finally, the 50 is visual. So when you think about being in the audience or being the speaker to an audience, one of the things you have to think about is that retention of what you say is heavily weighted towards what you're doing when you're saying those words that you're using. So those are these three things to remember. Now, some people say, well, what if I'm talking to somebody on the telephone? They're not going to have the visual. Well, that's okay too. And a recommendation that I use for that is have a mirror in front of you when you're talking to somebody on the phone so that you can smile when you're creating something that's pleasurable, how you might use a more stoic look on your face when you have to give some news that maybe is fearful or not so positive. But what we know is that when we're changing our facial movement, whether it's a smile, whether it's a frown, whether it's that stoic look, our voice changes in tone. So remember the 3 V's, verbal, vocal, and visual, and remember the 10-40-50 equation. So let me talk about some things that you can do once you have gotten to that point where your stress is lowered and you're calm. So you're using those techniques maybe beforehand, before you have a conversation with someone or an audience, however big that audience might be, and you get to that calmness. Because one of the things that we know is that our audiences tend to pick up on our emotions. So if we're frenetic, our audience is going to tend to be frenetic. If we are sad and lonely, our audience will be sad and lonely. If we are fearful, our audience picks that up. And we don't want to get to a point where our audience, we're doing some things emotionally that are impacting our audience in a way that they can't understand what we're talking about. So let me give you 4 things to think about. First of all, have a plan. What is it that you want as the takeaway of your communication? How do you want people to feel? And then begin to design the verbs, or the words, I'm sorry, that you want to use to display those feelings and emotions that you want. And use words that are comfortable for you and that are words that you use typically. So in a business setting, there are words that are going to have more meaning to your audience than others. Practice what you're going to say. This is not a time, particularly in these times, where you want to wing it. Write a script. You don't have to say every word that's in the script. I have a script. Here it is. I've gone over it probably 10 or 15 times. I practiced it this morning in the shower. Whoa. But have that script, have it ready. It doesn't mean you can't look at it periodically. I don't know every word that's on this script, even though I wrote it. So start with that. Do the plan. Think about what emotion or feeling or information you want the audience to take away, and then practice it. Next, use your voice in a calm, soothing way. Be clear. Clarity is absolutely important in communication. And so one of the things that's really, really important, particularly when you're doing something via phone or teleconferencing, speak a little bit more slowly than you might do if you were face-to-face with someone. give them an opportunity to hear what you say. Pause periodically to make your point so that things sink in. 2 or 3 seconds of silence is really a long time if you think about it. But very often, if you're giving somebody direction, if you're giving somebody some news, you know, today we're going to talk about communication. And then you begin talking. So that calm, clear voice is really, really important. Some people speak very, very quickly, and you have to be very careful about that so that your audience picks up what you're saying. Please make sure the next thing is to acknowledge as quickly as you can what the situation is, whether it's positive or negative. In some cases, particularly now with what's going on with the pandemic, you know, there's an elephant in the room. We're either talking to people because we have to tell them that, you know, maybe their job is going to go away. Maybe there are individuals that you're talking to or groups that you're talking to who are furloughed from your organization, and you're trying to update them on what's going on. But don't sugarcoat things. Adults want to hear the truth. And so acknowledge what's going on, and people will appreciate that. And then finally, show empathy. You know, I've often heard people say to others, I understand how you feel. And I've always used this as my advice to communicators. Don't ever say that to anybody. You do not know how somebody else feels. You know how you feel. But I've seen people who are being released from organizations who were happy about it. They weren't sad about it. They said, that's great. What a great opportunity for me. I can go do something different. But you can acknowledge feelings and you can be empathetic. You know, I know you may be having a tough time with this message. So please show that empathy. So in conclusion, let me just reiterate a couple of things for you. First of all, the 3 V's: verbal, vocal, visual. What are you saying? How are you saying it? And what are you doing when you're saying it? And then plan and practice. Number 1, use a calm, clear voice. Use what Gail's talked to you about. Maybe you'd have to take 4 breaths before you walk into that meeting to make a presentation. Or you need to take time to think about that really wonderful spot in Costa Rica, John, where you know, you feel that calmness of it. And then get to your audience. Address the elephant that's in the room if that's what it takes, but at least make sure that you're acknowledging what's going on and being honest with people about what's happening. And then finally, show that empathy for how people are feeling and allow them to input from their point of view as well. So with that, I'm going to end. I'll throw it back to you, Gail.
Okay, actually, I wanted to, as Johnny was talking about this whole idea of honesty, I have a sister in Canada that works for a large Canadian organization, and I am just shocked because they aren't being honest. And they're not saying, I mean, they're letting go of a lot of people, but they're not being honest with the people that are still there. And it creates tremendous stress and anxiety. You know, my sister has said to me, if I'm going to be fired, fire me. Like, it'll help me to know. But this, again, this uncertainty is what I think is so stressful. So I love that, Gianni. I think that's extremely important that we are very honest with our employees, whether you have one or you've got thousands of them. But anyway, that's,
Questions?
yeah. So we wanted to have time for questions. Does anybody have any questions for either one of us?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I have a comment. I've never thought about changing the tone of my voice when I speak to people or present in a professional situation. And I realized while you were speaking, I do that with my kids when I want to maybe make them see something differently or understand something in a different way. So that's really an amazing point and something that I hadn't thought of in the work world. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, when Gianni was explaining that to me, because one of the things we were thinking of how, what makes sense for the two of us, that we did, it really helped me realize, yeah, like we have to dig deep, we have to be calm, we have to, all the things that Gianni said, our voice inflection is huge. There was a very disturbed patient at Beaumont and an inpatient that they couldn't release. And they called me and said, well, Gail, what guided imagery should we play for this person? And went on to say, this person doesn't speak English. And I said, well, oh dear, I don't speak their language. I can't create one for them. Well, lo and behold, the night nurse played one of the insomnia recordings that I had produced for the hospital. That patient fell asleep. So I know that it had nothing to do with the words. It had everything to do with the inflection, a soft, rhythmic voice, So it really made me realize, wow, like the power of just the voice, not even the language, is important. So I agree with you, Gianni.
Yeah, you can create a lot of emotion with how you use your voice, the inflection in your voice. You can create fear. You want to create fear with your kids? You can do that. But you can also create pleasure in how you talk about something. And the other thing is that visual piece. I mean, if you want to talk about kids, how many times have you said to your kids, look me in the eye when I'm talking to you? Why do you want them to look you in the eye? Because you want them to see that you in fact mean what you say. The same is true of audiences. I don't care if we're communicating to 10 people like we are today, or we're communicating in an auditorium with 500 people. And if you've ever done that, you can't even see the audience past the first row. But I'll tell you what, as a public speaker, I'm looking at the last row and I'm looking at the 26th row. And I'm looking at that first row because what I want to happen is for each person in that room, each person on this screen, to feel like I'm talking to them and they are the only person in the room. That creates effective communication, that body language that says, I'm going to look at you while I'm talking to you. There are seminars that I've given and speeches that I've given, 10, 15, 20 times. I know them by heart. I could sit under a table and do them. And I could do it in a monotone. And I could sit here like this. Or I could sit up and become more believable to my audience. Not just with words, not just with inflection, but that connection of eye to eye. Other questions that people might have?
I don't really have a question, but just maybe an affirmation of a couple of things that you've said. I've done quite a bit of reading on effective communication skills, and I've attended quite a few seminars. And the two takeaways that I have gleaned from all of that is you actually just mentioned them both in the last 3 minutes, so that makes me feel really good. The first one is it's human nature to want to personalize a conversation with a colleague or a loved one when they're in a time of conflict. And the way that we all do it is say, I know how you feel. If they've lost a loved one, you immediately start talking about your loss and you think you're helping them but you're really not. And so what I've always been taught is what you really need to say is, I can't begin to imagine how you're feeling right now, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you, the company's here for you, whatever it is.
Yep.
And then secondly, one of the techniques that I was taught is if you're speaking to a group in a group setting, it can be helpful to focus on one person in that crowd, in that audience, and not close to you, but maybe a little further away in the group. And just act as if you're speaking to that one person, because that builds the connection between not only that one person, but the entire audience. Because you're speaking with someone or to someone, you're not speaking at someone. So thank you very much. I guess I haven't wasted all of those hours.
You're a great communicator, Joe.
I've heard you speak, Joe. You're good at it.
Well, thank you.
Another thing that I was thinking as Gianni was talking is that I think it's extremely important before you start any important communication, with your staff, or having to let someone go, or reassuring them about a furlough, is that you are in control of your mind. Your mind doesn't control you. We have this idea that busy monkey conscious mind is who we are. Neurologists say that's not true. It's the quiet part of your mind that holds your intelligence. And so we have to really practice when that, if you're feeling anxious about a phone call or a Zoom meeting that you have to make that has a lot of electricity to the topic, that you're calm. But to be calm, you really have to tell yourself, no, monkey mind, I'm shutting you down. That's not who I am. And if you do it over and over again, because it's a true discipline, most of us allow our monkey minds to go crazy all of the time, right? That's what's producing our stress. But to just calm it, no, I'm not going there, calming yourself maybe just with your breath, then moving in, to the tips that Gianni gave you about a crucial conversation, or maybe it's not even crucial, but just to be present, being in this moment with whoever you're communicating with, I think is paramount. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh yeah, so feel free to email us. Mine is gailpatricolo@gmail.com, and yours is?
John A. Patricolo, John A. Patricolo @gmail.com.
We'd be happy to help anybody, or if you know someone. And again, if you have anyone that actually, hopefully not, has COVID and is hospitalized, I'd be happy to give you the link to a guided imagery or Healthcare Heroes. We just recently did one for doctors and nurses and therapists. I could also forward you that link. We're happy to help in any way that we can during this crazy COVID storm.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both so much. If there are no further questions, we'll conclude. We will have this recording available, and we'll email it out to all of our attendees, and we can include your contact information on there as well. We do have some more webinars coming up for the Chamber, so I hope that you'll all join us for those. Continue to check our calendar. We have another virtual coffee break next week, and the following week after that, I believe, is another webinar with Chief Financial Credit Union on small business marketing. So a little different topic than what we discussed today. Variety is the spice of life, and thank you all again for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time. We're here to help you. So if you have topics you'd like covered on one of these webinars, if you'd like to present a webinar, please reach out to me. I'm not sure how long we'll be under the stay-at-home order. I know it's set to expire the 15th. The Chamber is expecting to continue doing webinars for the foreseeable future, even beyond that. So we'd like to stay in touch any way we can with all of you. So let us know again if there's anything we can do for you. With that, we'll conclude. And I really look forward to seeing everyone's faces on a regular basis. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay healthy.